afternoon, everyone. Like you said, my name is Jocelyn Providence, and I'm an environmental science student, environmental policy focused, and recently turned environmental activist. So I'm here to talk to you about the environmental movement. But first, the basics. What is environmentalism? Is it really easy being green? So what does environmentalism mean? It means, quote, the advocacy of the preservation, restoration, or improvement of the natural environment, especially the movement to control pollution. And this is defined by Merriam-Webster. The environmental movement is said to be started by my lovely lady, Rachel Carson, who's considered the founder of the environmental movement. She spoke very, very strongly around the time period of World War II and a little bit after in regards to how we as humans were hurting the environment through a lot of pesticides and toxic chemicals. So the most important thing to keep in mind about this definition is that it really focuses on the natural environment. So the biggest thing about that is that I don't think that all environments are completely natural, or as this definition is turning green. So you might be a little confused, like, isn't the environment green? Like, it's not blue, it's not orange, like, what are you talking about? So let me explain. So first off, why do we want to be environmentalists? We want to, and what do we think of when we think of environmentalists? We think of the tree hugger. Who doesn't love the tree hugger? Come on. Then we think of buying local, organic, spending $3 more to help out that environmental movement. We even think of, I don't know what I'm clicking wrong, sorry. We even think of our reusable tumblers. Like, come on, I'm saving the planet. I'm buying recycled things. I'm reusing stuff. Like, this is top of the line right here, but we all know what really saves the planet. Come on, recycling. Recycling, like, what else do we need to do besides recycling, you know? Like, that alone will save the planet, right? Right? Getting a little skeptics, I understand. So why do we even feel the need to do this stuff? Because places like these, the beautiful, pristine rainforests, lakes, cloud forests, places you go for research, places you go for vacation. And come on, look at this. Who doesn't want to save that? They're fuzzy, they're cute, they don't look like they'll eat your face off right there. So that's one of the main drivers of a lot of people when they think of the environmental movement. We want to save places like this because this environment treats us all the same. And so because of this, a lot of people think that as we save the environment together, we're all going to be treated by it the same. But, dun dun dun, what if I were to tell you that the environment does not affect all of us the same in actuality? And depending on where you live in your location, it could be drastically different. Let me explain to you how. So I get this right. Chester, Pennsylvania, and Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, about 30 minutes apart, 30 minutes or so apart, but drastically different environments. Chester, Pennsylvania is the location of the nation's largest infectious medical waste treatment facility, as well as 4 other hazardous and municipal waste incinerators. So Bryn Mawr's trash goes there to be burned. Okay, got it. So Puente Hills, California, Orange County, California, about 30 minutes or so apart again, but again, drastically different. Puente Hills recently closed the largest active landfill in the country. So again, Orange County is sending their own trash to this place. Okay, got it. So, next place, Appalachia. Parts of it 30 minutes or so from Charlottesville, Virginia, you know. Appalachia, again, drastically different. Appalachia is the place where mountaintop removal, mining for coal, is the most concentrated place in the US. And what do we use coal for? Electricity. So all of these lights are from that coal being, okay, great. So as you all see, there's an issue here. One place is benefiting from another's losses. So A lot of people don't realize this, but there is a movement going to address these issues, and that's the environmental justice movement. So the environmental justice movement was a movement started based off of grassroots organizations, mainly focused on, based off of civil rights movements, anti-toxic movements, and a lot of the leaders of these movements were girls and women. So they truly understood the effects that these toxic chemicals had on their families, their communities, and their livelihoods. And so a lot of people, when they think of environmental justice, if they even heard of it, think of, well, what I don't understand really the foundings of it. Where did it start from? Where did this start? So the environmental justice movement, a couple of the first movements that related to it were a protest in Warren County, North Carolina in 1982, when a lot of minorities were protesting the building of a waste facility, a toxic waste facility in their neighborhood. Another movement is when U.S. farm workers were protesting against being polluted in their own workplace by their own pesticides that they were using and creating. Another movement is just when Dr. King went down to support the garbage workers' strike the day before he was assassinated, and many people don't know that. And people even argue 500 years ago, Native Americans were the first victims to environmental injustice by Europeans coming here and taking over their lands. Think about that. So, after the growth of the environmental justice movement, and growing in masses and really trying to push for change, push for things in specific communities, especially communities of color and poor communities, there's always a pushback from the government. Whether good, bad, the government always has to do something, right? So in 1994, President Clinton wrote the Environmental Justice Executive Order to address concerns of environmental justice in low-income and poor communities. So this was a huge milestone. It really was, because the fact that this was being discussed at the national level was huge, but it really, really fell short of what the true mission of environmental justice was. And so there was a need to rebrand, reterm what is environmental justice. And one of the terms that they came up with was environmental racism. The biggest points of it was that it included the discrimination of people of color, the deliberate targeting of poor communities and communities of colors for toxic waste facilities and hazardous waste facilities, the official sanctioning of these places in these areas, and the exclusion of people of color from the mainstream environmental movement. And this was one of the main reasons why the environmental justice movement was made to begin with, because of the exclusion of people of color and poor people from being leadership roles in the environmental movement. Another term that was come up with is environmental classism. And this had to deal mostly with economically disadvantaged, undereducated, and poor communities being disproportionately burdened by other communities that benefited from a lot of the things that were taken from these poor communities. So, okay. So environmental slavery is the biggest term that I think is the most accurate to what is truly happening in these communities. And Sackby Wilson created this term, which is based off of political ecology and is synonymous with environmental oppression. And Wilson argues that this, quote, occurs when certain communities different from the dominant racial and class hegemony are used to host social and environmental externalities, while the dominant racial and class hegemony benefits from the devaluation of these communities, and the inequities in resource distribution allows these dominant populations to increase their environmental amenities, economic and social capital, while the environment and public health and quality of life in these low-income communities and communities of color are impacted disproportionately. So these dominant communities are not paying for the services provided by services provided by subordinate communities. And these burdened communities are constrained to be able to enjoy the ecological goods and services present in their own neighborhoods. So, big question, is it really easy being green? And my whole point about this big spiel about what other parts of the environmental movement that people don't know about is that it's not easy being green. But that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try to be green, because it's necessary to challenge yourself of these structural, procedural injustices to promote and protect the actual idea of environmental justice.